All right, guys. Welcome. Welcome, Joe. Continuing on with the Heffalump, the Heffalump project. Heffalump. It's tongue twisting Sunday. Yeah, so where are we? Well, this morning we finished. This morning we finished one of the bowmen that sits in the tower. Hunnick Bowman. Good evening, Mr. Heller. He's done this morning. And the Heffalump is coming along nicely. Let's see if I can see. Yeah, the colors are kind of accurate. It looks better in person. It'll look better in photographs. Heffalump. Oh, so today we're going to do the other crewman. We cut off one of his legs at the ankle because he's going to get glued like at this angle so he can be shooting straight ahead or something like that. We don't need to rain down on people, so that's what we're going to do next. And of course we've got the two footmen that are going to fit on there. Lots of folks on this stand. It's going to be real busy. Okay, let's do that. And we're doing the crewmen because I'm pretty much done with this as far as I can go without making some hard decisions. And the hard decisions are basically what color. This guy's sitting on like a mat or a blanket, and I don't know what color I'm going to do. I have a feeling I'm going to do something bright, but I don't want it to be out of context with the crew members. So we're going to do the crew members first, all the crew, and then we'll choose the blanket appropriate, and then we'll seal the guys, and that'll be that. Right. The other bowman. Let me give me some space to operate in. Oh. Okay. Red's always a good color for a map. Red gets your vote. I have so many things that are red. I don't know. I was actually thinking like a pink. I guess, is pink red? I don't know, some fruity color. They are on the Silk Road, so, maybe salmon, something like this. Something like that. That might not be bad. Yeah. Maybe. We'll see. Some fruity color. I read an article, or maybe not a whole article, but I read something. Yes, I've read something before. I read something that said something along the lines of, in the Middle East, pink was considered like a color of badassery or something. And I don't remember what it was. It was about Persians, or I don't know what it was, but just because you wear pink doesn't mean you're a sissy. Kind of like yellow. Yellow didn't used to be the color of cowards. Okay, we do have the fan going. We got a rainstorm going out there. One of the many. So hopefully that does not interrupt our thing. Well, I'm going to make his shirt white because after all, they are the white Huns. So lame ass reason. or an off-white. Where's that ivory color? Up to 4 viewers already. Yeah, it's couple times it takes a long time for people to show up, and sometimes you guys are just like waiting to pounce. Timing is everything. All right, what color is this? I almost separated too much. What about this color right here? Basic skin tone. It's kind of pinkish. I'm going to go with that. For his shirt. Carne base, base flesh. You did some horse blankets yesterday and they were way too bright compared to the rest of the miniature. So I dulled them down by adding a drop of black. Yep. There you go. A lot of people go like, man, your stuff looks too dark. I said, we're just playing in shitty lighting. Looks great here. Trust me. And I've played a couple games. The games that I've done from home that are, they use the same lighting, I have 2 of these OT lights. One of them stays here, and the other one is, traveling, and it's the same OT light. These things only burn 24 watts or something like that, and they just give off some awesome light, and it's like daylight, almost as good as daylight, and yeah, stuff looks great here. I mean, this is what I painted in, so. And now it is starting to look like skin tone. Now I'm not liking it. It's a little too skin tony. All right, that's okay. Dark sand. And maybe a color I've never even used. That skin tone color. I bought a lot of these colors just because it's like, well, it's a Vallejo color I don't have. Let's buy it. I was just using funds from other things that I sold. Colors that have probably only been opened one time to put a little drop on the end of them. Because that's what I was doing, is just painting a little drop, and then I store them like this so I can see the end of them. All right, let's see if this takes us where we need to go. Let's go with this. Whatever color this might be. Oh, this is a slippery one. All right. Yeah, I mix everything with black or brown as the bottom color. I don't know why I started painting that way. I think I probably saw something in the mid-90s that I liked the way it looked. And I kind of dissected how it was done. I plan on doing the same thing with some buildings. I've got an itch to do some 20 millimeter buildings that I have. I've had a long time. And I don't know when I'm going to play them, but I'd like to paint some other stuff along the way. There we go. We're about 1 month away from the show, and I've got this elephant to finish, 3 stands of light horse, and 1 stand of a cavalry. So I think I'll be able to get there just fine. Mr. Nettles, welcome. Was doing Greek light cav, and they were mostly earthy colors. Wanted to add a little color to the miniature or the blanket. Yeah. Well, the blanket's always good. Colors are Colors are like spices, right? They're expensive. Tints and tinctures and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna have mostly earth colored stuff. And if you want a specialty item and a specialty color that makes you fancier than your neighbor, it's gonna cost you coin. Or you're gonna have to, or like the Huns are, just rape it off your opponent. So these guys, however, I believe were not a fan of showering. Mr. Kevin, welcome. They are not a fan of showering, so I think that as time went on, their clothes got dirtier and dirtier. So I would imagine at the end of a campaign, if you didn't capture any clothing, you would be a very dirty looking individual, a very soiled looking individual. So I did paint a couple of these guys in red, but I immediately added brown to it to make it look, not very bright. There's one army that I have on my short list to do that is going to be a lot of fun to do if I get around to doing one. That's the Mamelukes. The Mamelukes will be very colorful, and not everything will be bright colorful. It'll be, earth shades and occasional color, and they're spending a lot of time in the desert, so stuff's going to look worn out very easily. You guys hear that? Rain? Water may have been too scarce for that. That's right. Unless you cross a river. So we'll see if I enjoy that game in about a month. Gets me into doing some colonial painting. I may just do it anyways. I might just paint some guys. You hear the bombardment? It's just like about every day this week. About this time we had which is kind of unusual. It's not unusual to have afternoon thunderstorms. It's unusual for the afternoon thunderstorms to be at this time. Usually it happens earlier. But it was hot as crap today. Very, 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 very hot. Went out and did some shopping. Did some appliance shopping. We had a second refrigerator in the garage that we kept as a spare, and it died this morning. We were on our way to do our normal shopping, and we're like, why are these things not cold? And I'll tell you what, if you ever have a second refrigerator, it is the most wonderful thing, especially if you're doing yard work, because the second refrigerator sits in the garage, so it's like, hey, let me grab a cold water or a soda or something like that. And once you get used to having that, it's pretty cool. So, especially if you're going somewhere and buying things in bulk when they're on sale, good to have a second freezer, second refrigerator. So I had to get one of those, and our washer was kind of on the fritz anyways. And it's 20 years old. 21 years old. So I don't feel bad about buying another one, because, it was going to happen sooner or later. There's few things that will last that long. The original Citadel paints is one of them, though. They will last like 40 years. 40? Close. They're over 30, that's for sure. As a kid, every time I open them up, it's like, oh, it smells like Margaret Thatcher. Because she was a prime minister probably when I bought it. Crazy. This part that I'm doing right now is actually one of my favorite things to do. I enjoy making things look like they're made of wood when they're not. I also enjoy like adding folds on clothing. It's very relaxing. It builds upon itself. It does take a little bit of time, but I enjoy it. I am not a fan of adding a wash or something and losing all of this funness that I'm enjoying. I might have done all that fun stuff before when I was starting painting, but not now. Like I used to do a lot of washes and stuff. When I used to do all my 1/2400 scale ships, I used washes and I liked them and I thought they looked pretty good. And then when I sold them, one of the reasons I sold them was I didn't like how they were painted. I had too many things started and not enough finished. So man, it is really coming down. All right, let's see how this guy looks like next to him. Okay, well, he's probably going to have a little brown hat. Some kind of little brown hat. Pants. Let's get a Russian green pants or something like that. Something that has a little bit of green, but it's not a true green. Russian uniform. Joseph, you moved to Alabama. There's some DBA players in Alabama. Try and think where what's his name lives. The guy I know lives right outside of Montgomery, and I believe his son moved there as well. Alabama is an interesting place in that sometimes people are too nice there. And what I mean is you almost get in a fight. Who's going to open the door for who when you go into a restaurant or something? I think that's a good thing. Alabama's just as hot as it is here, but you're like far away from salt water. Haven't gotten to visit any game places around here. You're north of Birmingham. Okay. Oh, really? Are we going to get stormed out? I'm going to be. That's disappointing. Well, north of Birmingham. I lived in Huntsville for 3 years in the late 70s. My dad took a job there. And moved out of there in 1980 and came here and lived in this place ever since. And it's amazing the things you remember as a kid and things you forget as a kid. You know, I moved out of there when I was, what, 10? 9? Let's see, I attended 4th grade here. So through 3rd grade. So I guess I moved out when I was 9. 6 to 9, something like that. Yeah, I attended 1st grade there. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Yeah. I still remember, you know, like where my house was and how to get to it. And of course, then with Google Earth, I like went right by it. Like, oh yeah, it looks the same. I remember it being on the bottom of a hill. Hey, if I get disconnected, sorry. It's not going to be the rain. It's not going to be the lightning. It's going to be the if there's any wind, the power lines that are connected to the feeders in the neighborhood are what's going to give out. So if I disconnect all of a sudden, that's what happened, and well, I apologize. But if I had control over the weather, I'd have a lot more fun at work tomorrow. Go on there, I was like, those guys are bastards. Let's give them some thunderstorms, you know? Make a super weapon where you control the weather. I'm sure that's figured in some movies or whatever, you know? Like if you had people that were giving you trouble and they lived in an environment that's very, very arid, like make it rain for like, you know, like for like months. Like they wouldn't know what to do. You remember the pink Packard my parents had? Dad said they got rid of it when I was 2. A Packard. One of the coolest things about DC is this museum that I would not have thought that it would be my favorite museum, but it ended up being my favorite museum. It's a museum called something along the lines of the American History Museum. So it's all about American history, which, you know, you would think if you've ever listened to any talking about American history, I'm not a fan of American history. There's just not that many interesting things that happen here compared to the rest of the world. I don't even like to war game anything in the United States. It's not very exciting from my standpoint. But one of the coolest things they had there, the whole museum is really cool, is that they had an area devoted to car manufacturers, including ones that no longer exist that I didn't know anything about. And, you know, Packard, obviously I've heard of what a Packard is. I could probably, you know, they were around in the 40s and so forth, maybe even the 50s. But there's, you know, car manufacturers I've never even heard of before. And they had all their labels and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting. But, you know, I like to learn things, you know. I don't want to learn things about everything. There's some things I'm just flat out not interested in. But I thought that was really interesting. So, cars are pretty cool, you know. I would enjoy them a lot more if I had, say, like a lift or something that I had access to work on your own vehicle. Might be cool to have an old car, you know, that you could work on. And with Amazon, you can get parts and figure shit out and stuff like that. But Packard, that's pretty old. The oldest car I remember us having was a 1968. I was born in 71, so I wouldn't have remembered anything before like 74. And we had a 1968 Ford station wagon that was a light green, not too different from this, and metallic. And it was just one huge piece of steel. Well, obviously it was more than one piece of steel, but it did not have radial tires. It had a hidden compartment in the back. Well, it had, let's see, 1968, and it had, if you turn the key, the rear window would would be would lower by motor, which is funny because the side windows didn't. So the side windows in the car did not lower. You had to, crank them down, which honestly I think is not really that much of a necessary thing. I don't think that if we went back to cars doing that, it's not that big of a deal. And it had the little windows, right? The little pop-out windows where you can get direct air conditioning. The car had air conditioning, but it had the windows at the front that you could orient to get, you know what I'm talking about. But the window in the back was powered, and it had a secret compartment in the middle of the bed of the station wagon base that you could fold out, and it would have like this two bench seats that faced each other, kind of in the middle. They were facing, like, they wouldn't face forward; they went face to the side, where you could get probably 4 kids in there, and they had I think they had seat belts too, which I think was kind of, that's pretty state of the art, I think, for that time period. But we had that car a long time, and I kind of have this. I have this coworker we like to talk about cars and stuff like that. He has this fetish for station wagons. I call them grocery getters. And growing up, we had 2 station wagons. That was one of them. And I just, I have a phobia with, I'll never own a station wagon anything because, I had to grow up with them. It's, as a kid, to make fun of you with having a station wagon. So I'm not a station wagon fan. But that was one vehicle that we had probably until my parents probably had it until 1993 or something like that. We used unleaded gas. I remember when we lived in Huntsville, Alabama, my dad would drive across the Tennessee River to get gas because it was cheaper. Who knows what the hell it would have been? Maybe 75 cents instead of 90. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. Gas was a lot less. People got paid a lot less too. So that whole thing that, people say, oh, gas is so much expensive compared to how it was back then. People didn't get paid shit back then. So, I don't know that gas is any cheaper. I think the big difference is there's so many things you have to have now that you didn't have to have before, like cell phones, cable, everything else is more expensive. So, I think gas has stayed, as much as we like to complain about the cost of gas, and cars are infinitely more fuel efficient. Man, it is just raining like a mofo. But I remember that. We had 2 cars. We had that one, and we had a 1973 Dodge Monaco, and it was buff colored. And should probably do that. I should probably if I didn't have anything to do, I'd probably collect Matchbox cars or Hot Wheels that were the vehicles that I grew up with, just because, I think it'd be kind of cool. 73 Dodge Monaco, and it was buff colored, and had the roof was a different color. It was like that squishy material. You know what I'm talking about. It almost looks like terry cloth, but obviously it's not terry cloth. And it was white. So it was buff with white. And I remember as a kid, I really liked it because it was, it had the little turn signal things at the very end of the hood where you could see them as the passenger, the driver. You could tell whether the right-hand one was turning, whatever, because a little blinker would be on there. But, a big beige boat. With bench seats. All those cars had bench seats. None of this bucket seat crap. It was all big, bouncy bench seat. That car ended up being not very, not a good one. They only kept it for about 6 years or something. Always seemed to give them trouble. But it's interesting things you remember as a kid. You know, other things you'd be like, I don't remember that at all. And, you know, you remember certain things that it's a good thing I'm a good swimmer. I tell you what, it did need to rain. It's rained a lot. It's probably rained more this year than I remember it ever raining, and it's rained a lot. All right, I'm gonna put this down. I feel like having a soda. I'm gonna put this on. I'll be right back in a moment. Sounds like what the locals call a gully washer. Oh man, yeah. That sounds like something that's step talk right there. Where there's gullies and stuff like that. All right, I'll be right back, folks. Yeah, but I love YouTube, and I don't mean just because of this, but there's some things that are just like cars. Like you don't know how to do something on your vehicle, go look it up. See if somebody made a video on it. I mean, there's a lot of people that donate their information. I think that's wonderful. You know, I mean, not everybody knows everything, and there's a lot of garbage too. But there's a lot of people with very specific set of skills, and they're not willing, and they're willing to share them. So, if I need to do something, I'm like, hey, I wonder if I can replace these lights on this vehicle. So go and see if there's a video for it, and then like, oh, that's great. I know what to do, and order the stuff from Amazon or whatever. Because you can't go to a store because nobody has anything, and you can't ask anybody anything there because they don't know shit. Cleans the streets. So, you know, if I had extra disposable income, it'd be cool to have a third vehicle to play around with. It didn't have to be anything expensive. You know, it could be something old. I wouldn't want something really old. A lot of people are into muscle cars. I like cars that can handle shit, you know? I'd have to have like an old rice burner or something like that. Like, well, I was going to say a 240, but those 240s are really expensive. But, you know, if I had disposable income, I'd just like keep my car and, you know, tinker with it. Not do anything ridiculous, but I think it's empowering, but I need a lift. Make it easy. Because I think it'd be pretty cool to do mechanic stuff. I just don't want to, you know, I don't want to do that for a living. Because I don't want to wear a uniform. I want to have a beer while I'm doing it. I'm not a big drinker, but I'm just saying, you know, it's kind of cool to, you know, just like fishing. I don't want to fish and not be able to have a beer. Just one or two. I'm not going to have 7. And think about it. And like, yeah, you could just kind of, I think that'd be a really cool thing to do. Did you know there were pyramid builders along the Mississippi? Yes, but my ancestors sneezed on them and they went away. Mound builders, right? DeSoto messed around with those guys. Ziggurat type. What a cool word, ziggurat. Mountain builders, right? There's a mountain builder list as opposed to dog people. You like that, right? I said if I'm going to go to Mexico over the wintertime, over the Christmas season, I'd probably be tempted to build my conquistador and Tlaxcalan army. I may still do it anyways. The flights are getting, I think they're like not cost prohibitive, but they just shouldn't cost that. That's one of the things about all this shit that's been going on in the last 3 years. I'm like, stand my ground. Like, I'm not paying that amount of money for that because that's not what it goes for. Well, that's what it costs now. Well, I'm not paying for it. Yeah, the flights are really expensive. We have some friends that live in Mexico that are like, hey, why don't you come visit us? And I don't think we really have anything planned during the holiday season this year. And that's a good time to travel for me because the plant is actually closed between Christmas and New Year's now. They've tried it a couple of years. Last two, they're like, we're just going to be closed down during that time, which is great because it means I don't have to do any work in advance. I just, like it'd be like that cartoon with the coyote and the sheepdog, beep, and you just drop whatever you're doing and you just walk off, and then when you come back, it's right where you left it. You don't have to like do a bunch of work and stuff. So I'm a big fan of. I wish that work would just say, this is when everybody takes your vacation time, and I don't care when it is. I would be like, okay, that would work because it'd be worth it for me. So, oh, Well, that was some unexpected excitement. My wife went to go take my daughter to, my daughter was going to go meet a friend of hers just down the road to have dinner. And since it was raining, my daughter's 17. She's a driver, but she's not, doesn't need to be in this. So my wife went to go take her. And I heard him come back in. They couldn't get out of our neighborhood. Well, through one way. So they just decided to stay back. It's, you know, somebody's out there building an ark, probably. I don't mind the rain as long as it's lightning's what I have a problem with. So, anyhow, fun on a Sunday. Fun on a Sunday. I'm glad we decided to be inactive and not go to the gym this evening. That would have been interesting. How goes it? It's wet. Well, not in here, but it's good. Can't complain. Shouldn't complain. I hope we have internet at work. One issue. Mr. Wadi, welcome. We had a problem last week. We got a day like this that it rained. And then I come into work in the morning and we had no phone or internet because of flooding. So I guess the box, it's all through the cable company. So hopefully we don't have that issue again. Otherwise it'll make... Actually, not having internet isn't a problem. Not having a phone isn't a problem. The problem is not having email. Because people may want to try to reach you to make changes that are happening the following day, and they can't reach you, and you're like, hey, we're not going to have anybody there to receive something, and then you're up a creek. You just made stroganoff, and it was good, so I am happy. Okay, have fun cleaning up your mess. Stroganoff, I thought you didn't like Russian stuff. Is stroganoff Russian? Stroganoff has noodles, right? So it's Russian with noodles. Maybe it's named after some commander in the Crimean War that went into hand-to-hand with some Sardinian troops or something like that. That's why it's named after. One of those games where you can play like, you know, what's the made-up definition and see people fall for you? Beef Stroganoff is named after Colonel Stroganoff in the Crimean War, who went hand to hand with some Sardinian troops, and therefore they added noodles to the dish. And this is for Huracan, and then some. Not specifically for Huracan. Lock that thunder. Oh yeah. It's a deluge here. Loch Moig 1. Excellent. Yes, it's for Huracan. It'll be for Huracan, but it's for other things as well. It's going to be for... I'm building this army specifically because Mitch got the Han Chinese. So I do the cooking and the others do the cleaning. Okay. That's a good scenario. Moi. Okay. Loch Moi. Okay. Yes, that is for Huracan. But it's mainly, I picked this army because Mitch is really excited about his Han Chinese. So these are the Shengnu, or the you've watched the cartoon Mulan. You know who the bad guys are, and I don't make any. I pick bad guys and good guys, and the Huns are definitely the bad guys. Yep, DBA. So we're going to do some scenarios based on. So right now the short-term goal is we're going to get the White Huns done for Huracan, and I'll add a couple other stands, and then we'll have the Xiongnu and a couple other stands, and we have Attila's army, and then we'll get up off our Huns and go in a different direction, wherever that may be. It's an archer without a base, yes. I cut off half of his leg because he's one of the tower guys. So he's the second guy in the tower. We've already painted this little guy that goes in the tower. This is the other guy that goes in the tower. And then we'll do the 2-foot guys. And I actually prefer not to paint. The best thing about the pandemic, well, there's a lot of things that were good. There's a lot of things that were bad, but there's a lot of things that were good. And one of the things that was good is I like building armies without having they have to be done by a certain time. Like there's no convention, so you don't have to get them done at any certain time. That doesn't mean you can sit on your ass and not do them, because it means while you're working on this, you can't work on something else. But I liked not having to worry about getting them done by a certain time. But I started working on these guys early enough that it's going to be almost a sure thing to accomplish these guys. Because I've got a month to finish this stand, 3 stands of light cavalry, which is only 6 figures, and then 3 figures on the command cavalry stand. So going to be relatively easy to get that accomplished. Your opposite. Deadlines force production. Yeah, I don't need more stress in my life. And I have one of the things I dislike the most in my personal life when I'm not at work is being rushed. I don't like being interrupted. I don't like being rushed. It's 2 things I have to deal with on a daily basis at work. Expect nothing less of you. The Spanish Inquisition would be elated that you cut the heathen's leg off. Yeah, except the other guys they're fighting are also heathens. I used the pandemic to virtually eliminate my mountain of shame. Yeah. And I think it kept a lot of... Hold on, I think I know who you are. And I'm not going to call you out on it if you don't want to be called out on it. Maybe not. Do you have a set of your half of Blood and Steel? Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to playing that at Huracan. I am. And I hope I like it. And I may do that kind of stuff anyways. I haven't played any of the games. And it just so happens the games you guys are running at Huracan are exactly in the time frame where it's DBA games that I'm not running. So your Friday night game is when they're doing 25 millimeter, which I don't have a 25 millimeter army. I could play it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to play I've signed up for both of them. Actually, Mitch and I are both signed up for both of them. So, which half Blood or Steel? Mr. Patriot, welcome. Not Edgar. Okay. You're the one I don't know. I know Edgar pretty well. So, yeah. Yeah, and So Mitch and I are actually signed up to play the Friday night one and the Saturday morning one. So you're Steel. So I'm looking to see how the mechanics work, because I've always had this idea of playing an imaginations type thing, and I don't mean imaginations like I'm going to make up a nation that doesn't exist. I mean doing historical stuff that's what if, and I always like to say, it would be, adventures in Absurdistan. So it's like an Afghanistan that's not really Afghanistan, but it is, but it isn't. And part of it is because I've played a couple of games that were run by someone that almost were like a combination of like Pig Wars and like that, where everybody has kind of like their own agenda. And I think that I thought about, you could play it with Sword in the Flame, but the Sword in the Flame just requires too many figures, And it's not that I don't want to paint a lot of figures. I just don't want to paint 120 British when I can paint 20 British and 20 French and 20 Russians and some Pathans and, I would rather play different nations, that all have kind of their own agenda. And I've played some really cool games by some folks that in Florida that have run some really interesting scenarios where you get handed a character and your mission may be just to make it across the board. You may have I don't know, missionaries. You got some armed mercenaries with some missionaries, and I have to go and deliver, I don't know, Bibles across the frickin' board. And then somebody else has to you have this guy who's running one of the tribes, and he wants to kill the invaders, but he also wouldn't mind if his other tribesmen, the other leader of the other tribe would, accidentally bite it too, So, yeah, I like that kind of stuff. So I'm looking for something that, the whole points-based system doesn't really interest me. I want to build scenarios. And, yeah, I've watched every demo you guys have, and it looks like it's got a lot of potential. Yeah, 25 to 35 figures. I like the individual basing. I would do it in 15s just because I would do it in 20s if 20s were available, but I'm not doing 28s. I just, as anal retentive as I am, I would spend 20 hours on one 28 millimeter figure. And I'm not going to live long enough to to get a sizable amount of stuff painted. So the individual basing is a selling point for me. So yeah. Anyhow, just a way of being creative, and I'd base them on pennies. And Litco makes those. Here's a 20 millimeter guy on a penny with the magnets. And bam, done. And you could be like, hey, let me paint these three guys. Because see, the problem with doing something like DBA, the biggest problem with something like DBA is, and I've experienced this in the last 2 years, is I want to go build an army. All right, so I decide what figures I'm going to use. Like these Huns, I've got forged in battle guys. Well, this isn't a Hun. Sorry. That's one of the Byzantine guys. I got forged in battle guys, and I've got guys from Gladiator, and I'm really happy with the figures. But let's say, and I'm going to use an actual example. Let's say Khorasan makes some really cool guys all of a sudden. I don't want to use them, and I can't because I've already painted all my guys, and I can't mix them in. But if I'm basing them individual cavalry figures, I could paint 4 more guys and add them on there. I like the idea of like, buy a pack of these guys and paint them and then work them into your army, because you don't have to you don't have to commit to who's going to be next to who on what stand, and it's fixed. So I like that concept of being able to mix and match stuff, because I like everybody's figures for the most part. I mean, yeah, I have favorites, but I'm not going to go and redo an army just because there are these figures that come out that I really want to use, and I'm like, well, I just end up not painting their stuff. So, not a fan of 28 myself unless it's a display piece. I don't mind playing with somebody else's, but I'm a painter. So the way you get me invested in something is paint my own stuff and play with my own things. So, when I first started gaming, we used to do naval gaming. And what we would do is we'd go to cons and we would bring all our stuff. We wouldn't run the game, but we'd sign up for a game and we're like, what vessel do you want to play? So I'd look and I'd want to play a vessel that I already own the miniature of. And, obviously the guy that was running the game supplied all the miniatures for that. And we'd be like, okay, I want to play them, but I want to use my miniature. It was all to 1/2400. Everybody was doing 1/2400 scale ships. So it was like, I would just replace him and put my own miniature out there, because it was the whole reason of having miniatures is to use your own figures. Otherwise, why even collect them? I mean, I get not everybody's into that, but I'm a painter. That's how I get. That's how you get me. So, I like the individual basing. And it's not World War II, so I can handle something that's a little bit less detailed. So I'm really looking forward to the games. I think I will guarantee that Mitch and I will either both like it or not like it. It's unlikely that we won't like. I think it's got a lot of potential. But the point stuff, I'm not really that interested in. I've already played DBA as a tournament. I'm not really interested in other tournament stuff. The other thing that would really get me would be conquistadors, and I know that they're talking about expanding that into the conquistador period, and that would be my jam right there. That'd be hard to resist. That'd be hard to resist. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm not one to, I am not a fan of picking up rules and figuring out how to play them on my own. I'd rather play a couple times with people that know how the rules. I can ask the questions directly, and then you pick up the rules. Then you kind of have a starting point of being able to read, what exactly things are, Con game you have been scenario driven. Yep. You guys have two Franco-Prussian games, so we don't care what side we play. I want to play on the same side as him because I always have to fight that bastard every time. The shoeless bastard. We don't care. You don't like to. I've never had a tournament problem. I have never had a bad experience with tournaments. But then it's about the people. You play with the right people and they're okay. You play with the wrong people, and no matter what the format is, you're going to have a problem. And in over 2,000 games of DBA that I've played, I've probably only encountered a problem maybe in 5 games. And only from 3 different people. And it's a people issue, It's a people. There's a guy that I play with relatively regularly that his problem is, he's not a problem anymore, but he started being a problem because he played with people that were trying to dick him around. And it's you need to be fair. It's it's not about winning. It's about how cool of a narrative is going to happen while we're playing this, Answers are $5. Well, I have good credit, so I have good credit. I have good credit and I have a good background check too. We all have our pet peeves. My pet peeve is I don't like being questioned. So if I go somewhere like Sam's Club or something like that and they ask you to see a card up, like I'm not dealing with, the wife can deal with that. I don't like being questioned. I'm like, I went into the Pentagon. I had no problem getting in the Pentagon. You're not stopping me. I got no problem with background checks or anything. That's why I don't like being stopped by the cops. I'm like, hold on, let's pull our records out, Mr. Officer, and see who should be stopping who. Sounds like wimpy burgers. Yeah. Hopping for dinner. Have a good evening. You too, man. We'll see you in about a month. Looking forward to it. You might actually enjoy us playing a lot more than anybody else, because we have one hell of a good time. We have one hell of a good time when we play. But that's what I've enjoyed now, especially since I've been filming our DBA games. The narrative that happens while we're playing. I mean, it's not like we're not trying to win. You're always trying to win, you know, regardless of what nation you're playing or how hopeless it might be. You know, if you play with good folks that have a similar attitude, you don't mind losing to them. So it's not about, oh, I can't afford to lose. I don't care about that. It's what kind of a narrative ends up developing as you're playing the game. You know, if you're going to read a story, let it be a fun story. And that's one of the things that I really like filming the games that we do, because there's so many cool things that happen that it is a shame that other folks don't get to experience the coincidence, the odd situations, the unruly insanity that just happens because of the dice rolls. That it is a shame to not share that excitement. And especially when the dice just are just unbelievable. I had a guy that watches this channel that suggested that I do some battles from the Old Testament. And he even gave me the matchups and everything. And I'm like, all right, we'll play. We don't have the right troops, but we don't have most of the right troops, but we try to do the best we can with the troop. You know, obviously the army list are as they were in the book, but, you know, sometimes you've got to use troops that aren't the correct ones to, you know, you don't have the right auxilia or something like that. And you could find it. It's called Classical Jewish Battles. I did it I think it was earlier this year. It's some insane battles. Just you got to see them. They're like, you know, you can't make this stuff up. And a lot of the battles weren't really well balanced. Like the underdog basically won. It was unbelievable. You got to watch them. They're really and just like that. Most of the games that we have, it's the exception that you have a game that we play that doesn't either come down to the wire or it doesn't twist of fate at the last minute, and this guy was almost down for the count and comes back and wins it. Just some really just amazing stuff happens. It's like I don't like to play without being filmed. The last con we did at in April, Recon. Obviously, we're at a con, so we can't really film because there's just too much stuff going on. And there's an epic battle that I did with the Pope. I have the Papal Army. It was just I could tell you about it. You wouldn't believe it. You'd have to be there. And luckily, I had lots of witnesses, and I made a believer out of all. Just some insane stuff, you know. That's what I look forward in a war game, you know. The insane narrative that nobody would believe you. And, you know, you got to play with people that understand that that shift of luck could happen to them too, you know. It could happen at any moment. So, those 6-1 splits, that not only do they happen once at the right time, but they happen 3 times in a row. And, you know, the odds of that happening are really unlikely. But still, they happened. And it drives a wonderful narrative. So, if everything goes right, we should have another series of battles that we'll play tomorrow. And you guys probably won't see until the next day due to uploading issues with YouTube. They take a bit of time sometimes to get their act together and process the video. There's a lot of stuff going on, you know. And hopefully you guys can enjoy that. But if we're playing and we're not filming, it's because too many people show up now. And that's not to make people stay at home, but you know, if you have more than 4 people, no, you got most people then that are not playing the game. So they're going to try to get these miniatures on the wash step. So if I am slow in posting, you all know why. It's either that or you're hitting some marijuana. I'm kidding. The only drugs I espouse are caffeine. That's it. I don't even espouse alcohol. Because some people misbehave with it. I mean, I don't know anybody really that gets angry when they drink. I certainly don't. I'm a hugger. And I also get sleepy. And we usually play at night on a work day, so I'm not really interested in that, you know. How do you choose music for a video? That's an excellent question, Kevin. Nah, not your style. Good. Not my style either. I don't know what that shit is. We're distillers, not growers. That's an excellent question, Kevin. And there is a lot of... Okay, we're good. There is a lot of resources that are free. So one of the problems with music is that even if your channel isn't monetized, you get in trouble with YouTube if you use, and I actually don't know how other channels do it. Like for instance, Little Wars does some great stuff, right? You guys know who Little Wars TV is. They're running a Pyrrhic campaign right now. And a lot of the music that they used, I recognize because it's on the soundtrack for Rome Total War, which is an awesome soundtrack, okay? But I know that's copyrighted. I don't know how they got around being able to use it. Because if you use something that's copyrighted, YouTube has some pretty complicated intelligence behind the scenes that automatically picks up on if you're using music that is copyrighted. And even so much as I did a live session about a year ago, and the girls were watching a sitcom, an older sitcom that is no longer running anymore. I think they do reruns of it or whatever. And I couldn't even hear it. It's the next room over. I couldn't even hear the theme song, but YouTube picked it up and they said, "Hey, you've got a copyright violation." I'm like, "How do I have a copyright violation? I don't understand." It was with music. I'm like, it's a live session. I don't play any music while I'm doing this. And it had picked up the soundtrack through the microphone here of the sitcom and basically said, "Hey, you need to either delete the video or mute the sound between 3 minutes and 43 seconds and 4 minutes or whatever. And I'm like, what sound is it? And it was the theme song of the sitcom, which I couldn't even hear. And I wasn't trying to promote. So there's a lot of really intelligent computer algorithm finding sound things within YouTube. So you've got to use something that you're able to. So one of the places you can go is there's a lot of online resources that are free music on there, and they're as good as anything you would want to use on your own. You know, there's a lot of really good music that's basically free to use. Some of it you have to add certain attributes onto your channel, saying this is music that's presented by so and so, and it's used with whatever. You know, they give you like a little paragraph you need to paste on your video. But there's so much free stuff out there that you can literally spend 8 hours surfing through things to find the perfect music for your channel. So instead of doing that, there's actually free stuff you can use in the editor that I use for my phone, because I edit all my videos through my phone, and because it's actually really easy to use, as it should be, instead of really complicated to use in these other programs. Because the video editors for any videos that you do is really similar to Excel. If you're familiar with Excel, Excel is really powerful. Those of us that use Excel a lot, I use Excel a lot, we use like 1/10 of the power that it can do, or maybe even less than that. Same thing with video editors. Video editors, you can get ones that are free that, you can make commercials for NBC on there, probably. You don't need all that stuff, okay? And they're just too complicated. So I want to use something that, is just not overwhelming. And, if I'm spending time editing videos, or fighting with editing the video, that's time I'm not painting. That's time I'm not, doing what I really like to do. So the editor that I use on my phone is really easy to use, as it should be. And it's got quite a bit of music that you just basically add it on there. You don't have to attribute it to anything. Nobody's going to ask you for permission or nothing, and you're good to go. So that's how I pick it. But there's a lot of artists that are extremely talented that you've never heard of. Just like there's guys that do, like, you go on YouTube and there's guys that do, guys are doing covers of Beatles songs or the Eagles or whatever it is that they're doing, or their own compositions. And I swear they're better than artists that get airplay. There's some really talented folks out there. I mean, either got fed up smelling it in Denver. Yeah, I went to Colorado a couple years ago, and I'm a fan of everything being legal, as long as you're not affecting somebody else's freedom, right? I think everything should be legal, within reason. I don't care if drugs are free. I'm not doing them, just out of principle. Just never done them. Don't like the subculture of it. Never interested in it. But after going to Colorado, where it's legal, people just have zero motivation. I mean, I saw so many people that weren't motivated to do anything. Just like, nah, F it. Or like, nah, I don't care if I'm like dirty, laying in a corner. It was just like, it just took your motivation. It was like the anti-caffeine. And, yeah, not my thing. What is your favorite horse flesh color? Man, it must be like the evening of awesome questions. That is an excellent question. It's the first horse I ever painted. And I'll be right back. Let me go grab him and I'll show you exactly what it is. Well, that took a little longer to find than it did. Okay, these are the first horse figures I ever painted. And this is my first DVA army, the feudal Spanish. And these are so old. Not so old, I mean, they're painted in 2004. This is when I was sealing with semi-gloss. So they are a little shiny. At some point, I'm going to redo this army. The basing is kind of a little archaic by today's standards, but I actually entered these guys at a painting contest and won the painting contest. Not that that means anything to me, but, you know, that'd be like the reason not to fix them up. But this horse right here is my favorite horse color. And I don't remember what it's called, maybe a chestnut or whatever. And the base color of it, and I love that color horse. It's just wonderful. It is mahogany, or is it the cavalry brown base color? Yeah, cavalry brown base color from Vallejo. I love this color horse. Little Horse say they use original music from a composer. He must make very good sound alikes of the Total War stuff that skirt the AI detection. Or they ask for permission. I don't know what it is. That's definitely a Total War soundtrack, and like the background of some of them playing. It's a superb soundtrack. I've listened to it not 1,000 times, obviously, but I had it the first tournament I ever ran. I had it playing in the background, for an event. So, yeah, I don't want them to get sued. I mean, I don't like anybody getting sued. Only people that make money on a suit is you know who. Yep, kept getting worse. Yeah, I have fun. I don't have a problem with anything being legal, but you know, I don't even smell that shit. What miniature type is your favorite to paint? You mean bows, cavalry, pikes? That is the horse closest, yes. Yep. Yeah, it's like a red-brown color. And these are all minifigs. With their long lances that... Well, these don't look out of place. But the javelin guys have lances that are that big, too. It's like, you want to throw that. It's like, hold on. Here, take a 14-foot pole, you know. So, yeah. I'll redo this army at some point. Because, I mean, I wouldn't repaint these guys. They're fine how they are. But so I went right from World War II stuff to this. So I went from painting this kind of stuff to this. Obviously, the basing here is really complicated compared to, you know, paint it green and dip it in woodland scenics crap. I'm redoing these guys on the basing. Here's some of my World War II guys that I'll do them. I'll finish them I did add the goop. We had some little rocks. I want to say I did it on Friday night. I just haven't finished them the rest of the way. So we're gonna work our World War II stuff in our painting projects. But yeah, really happy how these guys turned out. And there's some things that I used to do on the first army that I don't do anymore. I had a really hard time not making the mane and horsetail not in black. So all of the manes and tails on this army are black. And all of the hooves are also black. And I no longer do those two things. But, you know, you learn as you go. You find out what works for you, what you like better. You see other people's ideas. You're like, oh, I like what that guy did. What did you do? And then you're like, oh, okay, I could start implementing that kind of stuff in my own painting, you know. One of the guys at a Tactics, now closed, used to make miniatures for them. Aurora, Colorado. Minifigs or Stone Mountain. Okay. Yeah, one of the places here in Clearwater called Modeler's Mart used to import all the minifig stuff. So I had all the minifig. But I like mixing everybody's stuff. You know, if I'm doing Roman Legionnaires, yeah, I don't want to put an Essex guy and an Old Glory guy and a minifigs guy all on the same stand, because you want those guys all like standardized with standardized equipment. But feudal guys, yeah, you got some guys that are bigger, some guys that are on a different horse. I like that kind of stuff. It gives them panache, you know. Same thing if I was doing like Napoleonic stuff. I wouldn't want, use a guy from Essex with a guy from AB Miniatures and, maybe in different units and stuff, but I don't think I'd want to do that. Just because there's some standardization. Okay, what is my favorite unit to paint? Knights. Because of heraldry. I am a heraldry fan. I dig that a lot. And I never did anything heraldry related until 20 years ago, which sounds like a long time, and I guess it is, but I don't know. I love heraldry stuff. So anything that has like heraldry research and you get to paint the individual heraldry of the guys, big fan. So despite I don't like how knights behave, love to paint them, love doing the research on the people. And sometimes you can't find things out, so you have to make educated guesses, and I like all that stuff. It's empowering. Anything that involves heraldry, flags, I'm a big fan. Now, a lot of it is, if I had shitty heraldry, personally, I probably wouldn't like heraldry. But since my heraldry is pretty badass, that. Oh man. So I've got I got another feudal I got two more Spanish armies now to do. I've got the later feudal army, like the ones that was at the Navas de Tolosa, so 1200s to do. I've got the figures for that. I've had those figures for that, and just recently Historicon picked up a late medieval Spanish army. So the late medieval Spanish army doesn't have guys with a lot of shields. It's kind of late in the period, but the 1200 one, and there's a lot of resources for stuff like that. So yeah, I can't wait to do that kind of stuff. I love doing heraldry. I love doing heraldry. At some point, I gotta do 100 Years' War French army, because the Harbach twins have 200 Years' War English armies. So, and I got nothing against painting French stuff. And, when you play French, you know what you get to do. You get to do ridiculous accents. So that right there pays for itself. Unless you're doing the Romans around the crisis of the 3rd century, lots of changes then you could mix and match. Yep, you could. Yeah, that's some crazy complicated history, isn't it? You just got to read several books on it. Like, I thought the successors were the same way, okay? But I've read like 4 books on the successors, and I understand them really well now. Like, I know who's who. Like, somebody will say somebody's name. Oh, yeah, it's the guy that backstabbed the other guy that made friends with you. You just have to be exposed to it over and over and over again to beat it into your mind, El Cid done the best by hot. Yeah, I have an El Cid figure for that. That's what this feudal Spanish army is. So, it was a museum figure. They got some beautiful figures out there now by, I think they're called Reconquer Miniatures. And their stuff is just gorgeous. But I'm going to be honest with you. I actually like these cartoonish figures better than realistic ones. And minifigs are pretty realistic. They don't have faces that are oddballs or anything. They have very minimalist type faces. In other words, they don't look like anybody in particular. If you have a face that is very dominant looking, it's difficult to deal with lots of folks in your army looking like that. And the perfect example I can think of is there's a company called Britannia, when I used to do 20 millimeter. They have a very distinct face. And I don't know that it looks like anybody in particular. But like if you have an army that, everybody looks like, who's the guy that's in all those World War II movies? Charles Bronson, okay? Somebody like Charles Bronson, or if you have a guy like Willem Dafoe, you have like figures that look like Willem Dafoe. You don't want to. Willem Dafoe looks like not everybody else. He has very distinct features. You don't want a whole army of guys that look like Willem Dafoe. It's just very weird. You want guys that are kind of like, it could be anybody at a distance. You don't have very distinct features. But Britannia has very distinct figure faces, and everybody has the same face, whether it's a German figure or a British figure or a U.S. figure. They all have their grunts have a very distinct feature. I don't really care for that because it's a pain when you have to try to mix, like 20 figures and they all have the same dominant face expression type thing, It's a shame minifigs is no more. Well, they still make them in the UK. Last time I ordered was several years ago when they had a lot of flash. I still like them, The store owner up here at the game store I used to go to was the main distributor for the East Coast for minifigs. Those were the miniatures I used. Wish I had that stuff still. The main distributor for the East Coast for minifigs. Yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with ordering direct from the manufacturer, but the last time I ordered from minifigs, it was a problem. I got the stuff I needed, but it was more trouble than it should have been. And I really do like to use figures that people don't give a shit about anymore, minifigs, and they paint up just fine. I don't have Legio Heroica figures, which I absolutely love. Mainly because a lot of the stuff I've collected, it's been given to me, or I've gotten it in the flea market. Like, I don't want this. I don't want these guys anymore because I either got out of the hobby a long time ago, or I've now replaced the army with cooler, better figures. Well, these older figures paint up just fine. Maybe it's the challenge that I like to give in these guys some glory of days gone by. I like it. I think it's a challenge. Tabletop games and stuff like that. This stuff paints just fine. Give them some loving and they'll love you back. How kumbaya of me. Where is the white? He was in talks at one time to buy the molds for minifigs, but didn't go through with it. Yeah, I happen to like minifigs. Now, Mitch has a ton of minifigs. Almost all of his Napoleonics are minifigs, and they're very, very small. He actually has an unopened pack of minifigs Saxon horse. And I'm like, I should paint these guys for you. I probably said that in a video. But what would I do with some Saxon horse? I don't want to be spread too thin, but Joel does a really cool job with his units for DBN. He actually puts the names of the regiments underneath them. And I dig shit like that. I mean, I really... I would really get into that. If I did Napoleonics, like the original, this is a so-and-so regiment, and this has this kind of facings, and I would get into that. But they have all the Napoleonics that we need and then some. Oh, yeah. You like the minifigs toy soldier look for the age of musketry armies. Yeah, and I mean this type of minifigs. I think there was what do they call them? The strip minifigs. I've seen some of those. Yeah, those no bueno. But these guys, whoever this sculptor was, I like his work. The real wizards in the hobby, the people that sculpt all this stuff, and some guys are really well known, like Anthony Barton, and you could spot their stuff right off the bat. And some guys, you recognize them, like I don't know who that guy is. I mean, I recognize his work, but I don't know who he is. I still think anybody can paint this stuff. It's just a matter of just taking time to do it. I wonder if the guys that sculpt miniatures they can't paint worth a shit. I wonder if that's a thing. Like they're really good at sculpting, and they can't paint figures. And I'm like, this is easy. I mean, this is just paint by numbers with no numbers. I went to an art show in a town in a small town, maybe an hour and a half away from it. We just kind of went to an art show with had sidewalk artists and everything. And my daughter was about 11 or 12 at the time, and this guy was like live painting. He was like in a terrace area between two buildings, and he was painting what he saw, right? Painting it really well. And my daughter was really little. She might have even been like 9, or says, "Daddy, this guy paints like you do." And the guy, it caught the artist's attention. He's like, "Oh, you paint?" And I'm like, "Well, not really. I paint miniatures." And I showed him some of the pictures of my stuff, and he was like in awe of what I did. And I'm like, "Dude, you're creating shit out of nothing on a flat freaking canvas. You can't compare apples to oranges." And he kind of was, and I'm like, I'm not you just can't compare the two things. So I thought that was interesting that something that I thought was really, really difficult, he thought what I did was really, really difficult. But it's just a trick. And I'm sure maybe he knows what the trick is for his stuff as well. But I thought that was a really interesting comparison. Now also because I know kind of what goes into doing some of this stuff. There's artists like that do real art that I'm like, you can't put. I certainly put. I certainly discriminate between artists, and I'm talking about real art. I'm not talking about miniatures. I'm talking about real art. You can't compare a Rembrandt to Jackson Pollock and stuff like that. I mean, if you like Jackson Pollock stuff too, that's cool. But, let me get drunk and I'll make some stuff for you at half the price. Just can't. You can't compare, Velasquez and Picasso. But it's if you like it, you have to put it in your house. So. And there's people, I'm telling you, there's people that do stuff on YouTube. I'm not talking about my crap. I'm talking about real artists that, people you've never heard of that don't make any money off of it, that are just real wizards. There's some amazing stuff out there. And then there's some people that I consider have no talent and make millions. So I guess you just have to have the right people that do drugs with lots of money to show up at your gallery to buy your crap. There's some really talented people that have just never been discovered. It's really quite amazing. With music, art. Just amazing stuff out there. did I do with the... There's got to be some life left here. There we go. That's enough. Oh crap, it's almost 7:30. I'm going to have to cut off at 7:30 because they want to watch a movie. So we got to spend some time with the family. Well, we got some good discussions in. I really appreciate you guys coming out on and hanging. I asked my wife, if, I said, one thing I consider about doing is getting a set of headphones with a microphone. Maybe we can add a Discord channel onto this. I'm telling you, I'm a noob to that. I don't know if that'll work out. But my wife says, yeah, I got one from work. So maybe we'll try that in the future, But I'm really a noob. And if it becomes too much trouble, too much trouble meaning like, okay, I'm spending too much time tinkering with this to get it to work properly and not getting any successful painting not doing any successful painting, then that probably won't be an avenue that I will pursue. But I'll at least attempt to give it a shot. Maybe it'll work out, I don't know how you guys are, but I really don't have anybody to talk to about this cool hobby. This is really a cool hobby. It really, really is. And it's I still say it's a really affordable hobby. It's a calming hobby, and if it's historical, a plug for historical hobbies, you're learning real shit that really supposedly happened. So it's, I don't have anybody to talk to on a daily basis about this hobby. Like even painting stuff. Like Mitch, you might as well be talking to a wall if you're talking about painting shit with Mitch. He doesn't paint. So he's a non-painter. Thanks, Patriot, for coming by. As always. We're gonna finish his little happy hat. Almost looks like a big acorn fell on his head. Hunnick elf. It's all fun and games until he likes something that you have and he wants to take it from you by force. That's when he turns from a neighbor into a rat bastard. Yes, a pleasure. New for me being retired now. Oh, you didn't want to retire in California? Actually, I've heard of some people being retired in California. I don't know how the hell they do it. Just remember, if you ever want to live in Florida, there's less taxes here. For now. If you could stand the heat. Okay, here he is. How far did we get? We got a little bow, his little thing with his arrows go in and his sword to paint. Not much, maybe another 30 minutes or so when this guy's done. So, yeah. Next will be the two ground guys, and we'll be able to put all the parts together to put the Heffalump together. So, yeah, grew up in California. I probably would love the weather in California. At least Northern California. But this hobby and earthquakes don't mix. I don't need to be redoing shit. Yeah. So, okay, folks. As always, thanks for coming by. I appreciate you.